Good evening, good evening, everyone. We're going to start off with a very short video before we begin our program.
Said solidarity with Iran. You do know that there are Iranians right now that are celebrating what happened.
Oh, sure. There are monarchists that want the old corrupt system back of privilege, yes. But the Iranian Revolution, which called for nationalizing the oil and using it for the development of the whole country, that's what the U.S. wants back. That's what they want to reverse. They want to colonize every country of the world and do it at the point of a gun.
Okay, good evening, comrades and friends and allies. I want to thank everyone for attending on really short notice, both in person and on Zoom. And we have close to 100 people on Zoom tonight. Um, this emergency meeting in solidarity with the determined people and leadership in Iran and the heroic resistance they are leading throughout West Asia against US imperialism and the Zionist apartheid regime of Israel. We also want to take up what is at stake for the global movement and the workers and oppressed peoples with this growing crisis. My name is Monica Moorhead. I am a managing editor for Workers' World newspaper, and I will be your chair this evening. Before we begin our program of really some great speakers and following that with discussion, our party wants to pay tribute to Saeed Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, who was assassinated along with family members and colleagues by the US-Israeli missile strikes in the midst of negotiations. Khamenei was not only the beloved leader of the Iranian people, but was the beloved leader of the entire Muslim world. On the same day, around 185 Iranian schoolgirls and also 40 girl volleyball players were massacred in a southern province of Iran, and a mass funeral was held for them on Tuesday. You will be hearing about a very important vigil tomorrow for Khamenei and other political and military leaders in Iran, organized by Bronx Anti-War and other groups in just a few minutes. So now we would like to hold a moment of silence in honor of Saeed Ali Khamenei, who gave his life to the struggle for the right to sovereignty, self-determination, and global solidarity against imperialism. Rest in power. Thank you. So we will now hear some planned remarks followed by floor discussion and also on Zoom. First, we will hear from Larry Holmes, Workers' World Party's first secretary.
Good evening, comrades. Uh, there are many around the world, not only in West Asia, and even amongst the imperialists, who believe that Iran is winning, and that already this war is turning out to be catastrophic for U.S. imperialism and for Israel. Uh, I will. This is very encouraging. It's very early, as you all know, less than a week since the war began. I will defer to other speakers to chime in on those thoughts, as well as the many issues. Uh, what's next? How is this going to affect the global economy? So many issues. I just want to make a few key points um, for uh, for the discussion. Uh, Comrades, this is clearly a pivotal moment that can be said about so many things, but it surely can be said about this moment. It is going to change the world struggle in ways that we can only speculate about, but that speculation uh, justifiably includes another step downwards in the decline of U.S. imperialism. Whether that is appreciated today, tomorrow, sooner than later, that is inevitable. It also clarifies some things. I think for many of us it was already clear, but as simple as this: opposing war is absolutely essential. Opposing imperialism, absolutely essential. But a section of the movement, and a section that is growing and becoming stronger and more united, has to be in favor and act accordingly for the goal of destroying U.S. imperialism, not just opposing it, destroying it. Clearly, U.S. imperialism is not only an oppressor, an enslaver, a colonizer, it is an existential threat to the planet. Beyond oppression and colonialism and getting in the way of liberation, it's a threat to the survival of the planet. I think more people, regardless of their consciousness politically, are beginning to realize it, and it will move them. We have been discussing this. Everybody who is anti-imperialist, seriously anti-imperialist, on many levels, organizations and comrades who have been around, like me, as well as new young forces, been talking about this. But it's time for the talk to produce some concrete results. We need a united front against imperialism. We need a front that is ideological, that has an ideological anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, pro-revolutionary, pro-liberation, pro-resistance view. It's so heartening that some of the comrades are organizing a commemoration to Ayatollah Khomeini tomorrow. And I hope it's well attended. You don't have to agree with the Iranian leadership ideologically. You have to be in solidarity with their resistance, their militant, brave resistance to U.S. imperialism and the Zionist entity. And you have to commemorate the martyrs, all of them, whose names I think they're putting on missiles and drones. We need a front that, of course, opposes the war, but we need a front that very clearly, and I'm making the point as best as I can so it's not just dismissed as rhetoric. Not that that's, a bad thing, but I say this not rhetorically, not just as an applause line. We need a front that's for defeating U.S. imperialism. Straight out, for defeating it. ASAP. And our politics and our tactics should be informed by that. If we were in Iraq, we would be with the people who are shutting down the U.S. consulate. If we were in Pakistan, we would, be with those who are shutting down the consulate. I learned there's demonstrations all around the world, not just in West Asia. I was just seeing a video about a big demonstration in Rio in Brazil, where they were marching on the consulate and trying to shut it down. We need a front that is in solidarity with the rebellion in the global South, which has many contradictions, from the liberation struggles, communists and nationalists, to the bourgeois regimes, who are with it to a certain extent because they're tired of U.S. economic and military hegemony. But we need to be clearly in solidarity with them. I think there's a perception, and it's an old perception, that such a revolutionary united front is not conceivable. It can't be strong. It would tend to be marginal. And I disagree with that. I think we're in a different time. I think the world has evolved. I think the global South is winning the struggle to marginalize and ultimately vanquish, prevail over U.S. imperialism. And moreover, the global South cannot just be defined geographically. It exists here. It exists everywhere. It exists in the centers of U.S. imperialism, wherever oppressed people are, wherever Black and brown and indigenous people are. That's the global South. They can, they can kick out people. They can, do their crazy stuff to, for a white supremacist country, but it's not going to work. It's too late. The ship has sailed, and so the imperialists are surrounded both from without and also from within. This is a front that must get its leadership from oppressed people, along with communists and revolutionary and serious anti-imperialists. And comrades, just back to the question of how long we've been talking about this and maybe arguing about it. Well, that will continue, I suppose. Well, of necessity. But I think we have to get serious about it. Building a united front is both urgent, obviously, but it's also a serious and patient process. It's a long-term project that will go through phases. And none of that should be daunting. The world is dependent on us here in what we call the belly of the beast to do this. And if we allow anything at this point, if we allow anything to get in the way of doing this, consciously, unwittingly or not, we're not we're not shouldering our responsibility. We're not standing up. And so we must not allow anything, however long it takes, we must not allow anything to get in the way at this point of whatever we need to do to forge a revolutionary anti-imperialist united front that is class, has a global class view. I should add that there is another political and social base for opposition to the war. This is a complex base. It's not ideological. It's based in materialism. That's, from the perspective of workers who will suffer, soldiers who will die. I mean, it bothers me when they talk about, U.S. soldiers being killed. We're against that. But, what about the thousands of Iranians that are being killed? What about the people in Gaza? And when they, when the bourgeois media makes something big out of that, it's dehumanizing. It's as if the victims of the war, the real victims, don't matter. So I'm sure I'm not the only one that bothers. But the toll of US soldiers, the economic toll, the people are already against the war, and it's going to increase that opposition to the war. And I don't think we should have a hostile view of this. It's important. I don't think we should oppose it. I think we should try to win those in this movement who are open to a more revolutionary perspective. And I think we have to be with this movement. I think the important thing in terms of our approach to this movement is to distinguish classes. We speak to workers one way, but we speak to the bourgeois opposition to the war, which is not real opposition. They're for imperialism. They're just against us for tactical or strategic reasons. They think it was a mistake, but they're not really against it. And how we deal with them is different. But how we deal with the masses, with progressives, with the working class, that's different. We must talk to them in a different way. And it's important to get that in order to be effective, which is what we want to be. I think that's pretty much what I have to say. Just remember about the mass opposition. The Iranians, who clearly have prepared for this and are ready to fight, they are also dependent on mass opposition here in this country and around the world. They're dependent on it to weaken imperialism politically and play a role in forcing them to stop. We understand that, and we are for that. And that doesn't obviate or mitigate or change our differences with the bourgeois leadership, in some cases, of the larger anti-war movement. Anyway, comrades, thank you. That's what I.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, next we want to hear from Sunday from Arm the Dolls.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Monica. My name is Sunday. Excuse me. My name is Sunday from Arm the Dolls. Arm the Dolls is a Marxist-Leninist group based right here in New York City. Our focus is on Black and brown trans women, and we hope to improve and educate Black and brown trans women through political ways. Teach them. I'm sorry, it's been a long day. Improve them materially as well. and physically as well. I have a short statement written by the Femme Queen Council, as we call it, our organizing committee. Over the past week, we have lost another 1,000 people, martyrs to American imperialism. This includes over 165 Iranian schoolgirls, nurses, doctors, political officials, and, of course, the blessed Ayatollah Khomeini. Hundreds have been martyred in Lebanon, as well as hundreds of thousands displaced from the south, and may they all rest in peace. At the very same time, trans Americans have continued to have their human rights stripped away. Kansas has taken state-issued identification away from their trans residents. NYU, Langone, Mount Sinai, and so many more hospitals continue to shut down their trans healthcare programs, specifically utilized by youth and Black and Brown women. Trans migrants have been continuing to be disappeared by ICE and DHS from their families and communities, leaving little trace of what they are, or where they are, or what their conditions are. Prisons across the nation have shut down trans healthcare to incarcerated people, leaving women such as Gia Abigail Valentina, who recently underwent vaginoplasty surgery without hormones to heal her body. Just for those that don't know, this could kill her. She doesn't make hormones herself anymore. This could kill her. All of these are examples of sicknesses of the most malignant kind, that is US imperialism. This is why we, at Arm the Dolls, unequivocally stand in solidarity with the people of Iran, Lebanon, and Palestine, as well as the brave axis of resistance that is fighting for their nation's sovereignty. This is why we call for the destruction of Western imperialism. This is why we rejoice at the IRGC striking down US military bases spread out across the Gulf, as well as settler colonial states of the Zionist entity. While our brothers and sisters are simultaneously strangled in nations from the global south, we are strangled here in the imperial core. We are both being strangled by the same entity. But we must do our part for them and for us. We must unite based upon the primary contradictions to take steps towards the liberation of humanity. Like the great martyr Hassan Kanafani brilliantly put, imperialism has laid its body over the world, the head in Eastern Asia, the heart in the Middle East, its arteries reaching Africa and Latin America. Wherever you strike it, you damage it, and you serve the world revolution. As those surviving in the belly of the beast, we must strike against imperialism daily. It is our duty to do so. If we are able to take upon this calling and our comrades in the global south continue to resist heroically, we will eventually liberate one another. And on that note, I'd love to see you all tomorrow at Washington Square Park at 5 p.m. I ask everybody, please bring candles, portraits of the martyrs, and flowers for the vigil. And this is with love and solidarity from all of us at Arm the Dolls. Thank you again.
Okay, I want to call on Che Marino from Bronx Anti-War, who's going to talk more about the vigil tomorrow.
Hey, comrades. I'm just going to read the description that we put out. So the vigil is, it's titled Vigil and Community Iftar for Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and All Martyrs of American Imperialism. It's going to be Friday, March 6, 2026 at the Washington Square Park Arch in New York. The vigil starts at 5. There's going to be iftar at 5:53 and 6:08 p.m. and Salat at 6:30 p.m. Join us for a community vigil honoring the martyrdom of the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, assassinated by U.S. government forces on March 1st. Throughout his life, Khamenei defended the dignity of the Iranian people and stood firmly against Zionism and the criminal American regime. Since the Islamic Revolution in 1979 overthrew the US-backed puppet government, the Iranian people have resisted Western domination and the exploitation of their land, labor, and resources. In that time, Iran severed all ties with the Zionist regime and was the first country to host a Palestinian embassy on its soil, all while materially supporting Palestinian resistance and national liberation movements across the world. In his life, Ayatollah Khamenei spoke about the shared struggle of oppressed people in the United States and around the world. In 1985, Khamenei met with the Pan-African leader of Burkina Faso, Thomas Sankara. He later voiced support for the Black Lives Matter movement after the martyrdom of Eric Garner. In 2017, he paused the speech to honor Malcolm X and recite Surah Fatiha for Malcolm's soul. And in 2020, he connected the public execution of George Floyd to the global struggle against American imperialism, saying it reflected, quote, the nature of the U.S. government. From Brooklyn to the Bronx, Haiti to Venezuela, and from Gaza to the Congo, American pigs and their propaganda have continuously spread lies about governments and peoples who refuse to bow down to the Epstein empire. This vigil is a solemn reminder that American colonial violence is a singular evil. We honor all those who have been killed at the hands of American pigs, from Khamenei to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Hein Rajab, Eric Garner, and the more than 165 schoolgirls massacred by American bombs dropped on Iran just a few days ago. We stand with Ayatollah Khamenei because he stood for us. And that's it. Thank you.
We have a few more speakers in the room, but right now, we're going to hear from Sayeda Raza with the Al-Quds Day Committee. She's going to do a Zoom presentation.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Okay, great. So I'm going to share my screen and just let me know if you guys can see it. Can you guys see it?
Oh, yes, now we can see it.
Okay, great.
No. Oh, okay, 1 second. We just have an audio issue.
Are you guys able to see it now?
We just can't, 1 second, we're just fixing your audio.
Okay,
We can see it.
okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. You guys can hear me now?
Yes, we can. Online, we can.
Okay, I think they're fixing it in person. Hello? How is my volume good now?
Your volume is good.
Okay. How about in person?
Yeah, 1 moment.
Okay.
You say it's the mic is more correct. Oh, can you speak again now?
Hello?
Yeah, let's go.
You guys hear me? Volume's good?
Yes.
Hello?
Okay. So Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you all. I wanted to first thank all the organizers for putting together this really important meeting and I'm honored to be speaking amongst all of you guys today. It's really inspiring to see so many different groups of people come together to stand with the resistance in Iran and to honor martyr Ayatollah Khamenei. So my name is Sayeda, and I'm one of the organizers from Al-Quds Committee in New York. We organize the annual Al-Quds Day demonstrations here in New York City. So before I get into Al-Quds Day, I first wanted to comment on the events that have taken place in the past week. As all of you guys know, and as the previous speakers alluded to, the arrogant Epstein-worshipping American government assassinated Ayatollah Khamenei this past weekend. Their demonic behavior didn't end there. They also targeted hundreds and hundreds of civilians, including more than 185 school children who were martyred. The deliberate assassination of Shaheed, of martyr Ayatollah Khamenei by the US regime, alongside its Zionist entity puppets, truly is one of the dumbest things they could have ever done. And they will see the impact of their actions as the people continue to rise up in anger and defiance. Ayatollah Khamenei is so much more than just a supreme leader. To the Iranian people and to Muslims around the region and globe, he is a spiritual guide. He is an Ayatollah. He is a leader. He is a beacon of hope for the oppressed peoples. And now they have made him into a martyr. Ayatollah Khamenei was in his home during the time of the assassination. He was undertaking his duties towards his people when he was assassinated. This act only continues to expose the barbaric nature of US imperialism and Zionism, and has united and angered the masses throughout the region. American media can't even hide how much they've angered the masses, and the millions upon millions that are on the streets in Iraq, in Iran, Lebanon, Yemen, Pakistan, and around the globe. The Americans will lose. They don't know the type of people they are going up against. These are people of morality, people of strong will, people who don't bow down to humiliation. A people whose spirits rise in the face of tyranny, a people whose history echoes of revolution and resistance, and a people where martyrdom is viewed as an honor and is the preference over a life of humiliation. I wanted to emphasize that it is imperative that the masses, the American masses, rise up in protest and that they demand their tax dollars aren't used for this war. Their silence, lack of care, and fear are all tools used by the imperialist entities, and they are relying on that to execute their crimes. So mass mobilization is required by the American public, and Al-Quds Day is one of these opportunities. So on this slide, I actually put up a QR code of Ayatollah Khamenei's autobiography. It's in English, and it's an autobiography about his early life as an activist during the years of the revolution. So if anyone's interested, that autobiography, there's a PDF, it's free. And let me know if it's not working or anything. So I'll just leave that up for a moment so you guys can access that. And this is a quote from Ayatollah Khamenei. He said, "The issue of Palestine continues to be the most important and active issue for the Islamic Ummah collectively." Okay. So for the rest of this, I'm going to talk a little bit about what Al-Quds Day is. So the International Day of Al-Quds, it takes place annually around the world in the form of protests, marches, and demonstrations. It's held on the last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan. The objective of this day is to take a clear stance against worldwide oppression, specifically highlighting the Zionist usurpation of Palestine. Al-Quds Day, it demonstrates the unity, the will, the power of those seeking justice in the face of world hegemonies today. So soon after the establishment of the Islamic Republic of Iran in 1979, a little bit after the revolution, Imam Khomeini, he made this historical announcement about 6 months after the revolution, where he appointed the last Friday of Ramadan as the day of Al-Quds. During the declaration, Imam Khomeini, and we'll look a little bit into some of the things he said in the declaration in the coming slides, but during this declaration, he basically called on Muslims and justice seekers around the world to join forces in support of the oppressed. And he centralized Palestine as a central cause for all of these groups. And so he specifically announced this day to be in the last Friday of Ramadan for a reason, right? So he said with Al-Quds Day, it connects people around the world during Ramadan. And during Ramadan, because it's a time that represents spiritual growth and renewance, providing a God-centric and faith-based approach in the global struggle against oppression. So it signifies having Al-Quds Day in Ramadan, it signifies the importance of how faith and action must go hand in hand. Okay, so a little bit into the historical context at the time. So this is 1979, right? And during this time, this is when many Muslim and Arab nations were normalizing with the settler entity, with the Zionist entity, out of fear from Western powers, right? And this declaration, it gave strength to stand up for truth and justice, highlighting that those standing up against oppression will always be triumphant when they're relying on God. It was also, as I mentioned, established in the early days of the Islamic Republic. And it was a way for Imam Khomeini to show that the Palestinian cause is an intrinsic part of the ideals of this new system. The cause of Palestine is an extremely intrinsic part of the Islamic Revolution in Iran. The anger of the masses towards the Shah when it came to normalization, that was something that was happening prior to the revolution. And Iran is actually the only country in the world that has a doctrine outlining a specific amount of funding must go towards the active arming and assistance of the Palestinian resistance. So, following this declaration and following the Islamic Revolution in 1979, what we saw were all of these different resistance fronts across the region strengthening, mobilizing, and it inspired the Palestinian resistance. It inspired the Lebanese resistance groups. It inspired those in Yemen, those in Iraq, across Western nations as well, the Muslims there, right? And Muslims and justice seekers alike used Al-Quds Day as an example of power and resilience in the face of oppression and injustice. So I have a couple of quotes from the official declaration of Al-Quds Day that I thought would be interesting to go over. So this is a statement from Imam Khomeini where he says, Quds Day is a global day. It is not a day exclusively for Quds. So Quds is the Arabic word for Jerusalem, right? So it's not a day exclusively for Quds. It is a day when the oppressed confront the oppressors. It is a day of confrontations for nations that have been under the tyranny of the American government and other oppressors. It is a day when the oppressed should become equipped against the oppressors, and they should rub their noses in the dirt. It is a day when committed individuals are preferred over hypocrites. Dedicated people consider today as Quds Day and act as they are obliged. The hypocrites, as well as those who are secretly acquainted with the superpowers and are friendly with Israel, are indifferent today or do not allow the nations to demonstrate on this day. So we can see here how Imam Khomeini spoke about how Al-Quds Day is that distinguishment between the hypocrites versus those that are the true justice seekers. A couple of other quotes here during the declaration. He said, "It is a day when these intellectuals who have formed a relation with America or American agents should be warned that if they don't quit this interfering, they will be suppressed." Quds Day is the day when superpowers should be warned that they must leave the oppressed alone and sit back and take their own place. Israel has become the enemy of humanity on a daily basis. It starts a new uproar, setting our brothers in southern Lebanon on fire. Israel should try to understand that its masters don't have any power any longer. They should choose isolation. They should cut their covetousness of Iran and take their hands off all Islamic countries. And he continues talking about how it's a declaration that the satanic superpowers want to isolate the Islamic nations and impose themselves on the scene of action. So I'll read the last part where he says, the day of Quds is a day to distinguish between truth and falsehood. I ask God Almighty to give victory to Islam and support the deprived in order to defeat the arrogant, those who cause deprivation. I implore God to free our Muslim brothers in Palestine and South Lebanon and everywhere in the world from oppressors, deprivers, and plunderers. Okay, so this slide depicts what we know as the resistance axis, right? And ultimately, the main effect of Al-Quds Day is the strengthening of the resistance axis. It brought together all of these resistance fronts together to centralize that common cause of fighting imperialism and Zionism, and also urged all of these different groups of people to put the liberation of Palestine at the center of their cause. So we can see an image here on the top left. This is the Iraqi resistance. On the bottom left, that's actually Venezuela, a mural of Shaheed martyr Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah in Venezuela. You can see the top, we have a photo of Iran, Ayatollah Khomeini. You have the Lebanese resistance, and you can see them looking towards the image of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. The top right, we have a photo of the Palestinian resistance with Ismail Haniyeh. And then we have a photo of the Yemeni resistance. The Houthis are Ansarullah, and you could see them marching on an American flag and a Zionist entity flag. And I also wanted to highlight a quote from Ayatollah Khomeini where he says here, and in this quote, he's talking directly to American students. So Ayatollah Khomeini, he wrote a letter to the university students in 2024 that were building encampments in their universities and protesting. And he tells them, he says, you have now joined a branch of the resistance front and have begun an honorable struggle in the face of your government's ruthless pressure, which openly supports Zionists. So we can see here that us here in the belly of the beast, right, and these students protesting are also part of this resistance front, right? Okay, so for our call to action for Al-Quds Day this year, Al-Quds Day is going to be the next Friday on March 13th. It's going to be from 3:30 to 6:30 p.m. in Times Square. So every year for Al-Quds Day, we have a theme. The past couple of years, it's been centered around the Noble Al-Aqsa flood operation. The previous year, we had a year where we focused on the West Bank. So this year, our central theme will be highlighting this connection between the Iranian resistance and the Palestinian resistance. I also encourage you all to go to the vigil tomorrow, and I hope to see you all there. And thank you for giving me the chance to present about Al-Quds Day.
I had said I wanted to come down.
But I wanted to welcome the students that are also on Zoom at Sister's Place.
Yes.
My sister's place they're tuning in to this meeting. So welcome to those students.
Yeah, I had told Sarah that I wanted to come down because, you know, sometimes we talk a lot and don't necessarily learn a lot. And so the issues that are going on in the Middle East right now are complex. And I wanted, you know, we do our study group on Thursday. And oh, is that, that's right, it's that technical guy. Okay. Yes. Oh, is that better? Straight ahead. I wanted our comrades to be informed more about what's happening. Certainly, we have peripheral understandings of what's happening in Iran. You cannot help that. But I think as Comrade Holmes said, one of the things that's very important now is for those of us who are revolutionary, those of us who are conscious, it's important the presentation of the question of what's going on now. And our understanding, and we've gotten some solidarity with that, listening to some of our comrades in Africa, is that we're in a period where, and I think as Larry said, it's a downward motion, but it's not a downward motion in the revolutionary essence of what's happening. Imperialism is at its weakest stage, and is to appreciate that this stage also makes them the most vicious. But that viciousness only exposes the very nature of who they are, even to the horror of some of their allies. And so it's important, as we see every day, it seems like something else is happening, where there's another right being taken away, another child is being kidnapped, and all this is going on. This is actually a sign of weakness, because in this period, their best weapon is to not be exposed and to be able to continue to fool people into convincing them that things are actually getting better. So we feel good in this period, even as vicious and as hard as it is, because we think the people are winning. And I think that's important. So now it gives responsibility. And that's why I wanted comrades to hear what's happening this evening and hear El-Hud's Day, the Ayatollah, to understand that this is part of the fabric of the revolutionary motion in the world. And it passes through these changes, and we lose and martyr folks in that process. And in our own motion and in our solidarity with other comrades and countries and movements, we lose people. And that is a part of the process of changing this world. And I think right now, and you know what Larry said, right now, it might seem in one sense that things seem so difficult, but yet we are presented with a great opportunity at this point. They have touched Iran. Iran is not a small island somewhere. It's 90 million people. And they've gone into it for all of the different tactical and strategic reasons they want to. But at the same time, they are also awakening another part of the world to the resistance to imperialism. And I say this around the question of imperialism because the class contradictions in the Black community, say in particular, are something that we must pay particular attention to if we're going to make sure that our national right to liberation does not become confused, that anti-imperialism can easily be motioned into being alliances to imperialism if the wrong forces are in the front of it. And so I I've said that we see it extremely important for the December 12th movement to do our work inside our community, where over a period of time, the class forces that are influencing the Black liberation struggle have really turned against progress in that regard. And they say, as Cabral said, tell no lies and claim no easy victories in that regard. There's work, very serious work that needs to be done. And we've lost many comrades that have been steeled in the sense of our history and our motion and our experience in that regard. And we have to rebuild that. We have to win over another generation of young people to let them know what their role is in this period right now. Some of us will not be here going forward, but we must fight for a legacy that transforms and transfers that experience, that commitment to another generation. As one of our young comrades said, intergenerational solidarity is so critical now that there are new things, but because they're new, don't make them right. They're old things because they're old. That doesn't make them correct. It is the experience and knowledge to be able to understand that which can serve revolution and that which opposes revolution has to be identified in that regard. And so where we are now, I think, is a very critical period, particularly for many of us who've been together over many years. I look in this room and I see people that we smile when we see each other because we know each other, because we've been in an experience over decades, not days and months and years, but decades. And we say to ourselves, at this point in time, our greatest contribution is the optimism, is revolutionary optimism. That's one of our most critical things to be able to see. And that's what ideology gives us. That's what politics gives us. It gives us the ability to see the road ahead, even in the greatest difficulties, to see weakness when what's being advocated by the enemy is strength, to see strength when they try to undermine and say we're at the weakest point in our lives in that regard. So we want, my comrade Roger, we've been together on 50 years. We wanted to come down because the idea of the front is extremely important. But to build the front, the question is, what are the components that are going to go into it? And that's a very, very important question, because as you build the party, as we build our movement, its strength is tied very much to what the strength of the front would be. And if we're weak in that, then how could not the front be weak in that? Because a front is very interesting territory, because it's unity and then a conscious understanding of actual disunity on many issues. But the question is, how do we arrive at the things that we can aim against imperialism? We find sometimes in this country of personalities and individualism, sometimes personalities and character separate the building of a front. It's not deep ideology. No, it's personalities. I don't like you. I don't want to be away from you. I don't these things actually have a material impact on, ultimately, Larry, do we pull that front together? And we sit and say it's necessary to make it so. But the reality of making it so means it's not just something we read. It's a real experience of, everybody comes from where they are, where they say, you make revolution where you are. And that's your contribution to world revolution. You contribute to it from where you are, in terms of, as the Cubans say, our socialism has palm trees. The essence of that is it has to apply and speak to our actual conditions. And And that's what I think we're challenged with now. You know, sometimes I say to folks, and I say to my comrades, yes, we go to Union Square. Yes, we go to Times Square, but we have to go to the Bronx. We got to go to the heart of Bed-Stuy. We got to go to East New York. You know, we have to take ourselves there so that people see the reality of what a revolutionary movement is. You know, it's not a television question. It's a question of people actually seeing and feeling a different level of unity. You know, so you know, the December 12th movement is here for the go down. You know what I'm saying? And you know, I know Sarah said, "Oh, Wally, y'all gonna be da 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 da." I said, "Sarah, we're coming and da 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 da." Many tasks cry out to be done, all urgently in that regard. But we have to build the time for building the front. We have to pay particular attention to what the building blocks will be if there's going to be longevity and strength to it. Straight ahead. I mean, that's.
Thank you, Omawale. And I'm glad you acknowledge another leader, longtime leader of the December 12th movement, Roger Wareham. You're welcome. Okay, next we're going to hear from Sarah Flounders, who is a Workers' World contributing editor.
And let me say before she sits,
Okay.
Sarah doesn't remember this, but Sarah came back from China, and she came back and she made a statement that I thought was extremely powerful. She said when she was there, she was doing an article in a newspaper. And in the article, she said, you know, one of the most important things to understand about the bourgeoisie, and is sombering. They don't see a world that they're not in charge of. You have to understand that to understand how dangerous they are. And I've never forgotten that statement, Sarah. Never.
Well, I'm going to start with Omawale's revolutionary optimism, because we're not optimists. And if the whole resistance movement isn't, and especially at this moment, then we'll miss what's really happening. Now, it's a world-changing event, as Larry described. It's ripping apart everything, and it's bringing every political contradiction just roaring to the front. Here in the US, it will transform workers' consciousness. Wars do that. Wars really do that. Things change fast. Now, the Iranian Revolution was one of those great, huge, historic upheavals. 1979. It ripped apart the US main outpost in the entire region, the key place. And it was an upheaval that drove the US out, broke the back of the military. It was really transformative. In many ways, that was 1979, like the Great Chinese Revolution in 1949. Different, but it was an upheaval that broke imperialist hold, and it was thoroughgoing down to the very root. And the US has spent decades with sanctions, with assassinations, with wars, with all kinds of regime change. How do they destroy Iran? They're just determined about it. There's never been a good word about it. There's never been a moment of peace. Now, internationally, and especially throughout West Asia, it's explosive what's happened, because this stage of the war began with the worst insult and outrage you can imagine to to assassinate this highly respected religious and political leader in a political blow that was like a sneak attack. We're having negotiations. Take this back and discuss it. And not only the Ayatollah Khomeini, but 49 of the top political and military leaders lost in one blast. That's really quite a hit. Killed in the most duplicitous way. Now, the U.S. thought, just like they thought they could just kidnap President Maduro and Celia Flores and everything would fall apart. So let's look at how it's going. How's this war going? Well, the CIA took a direct hit in the Saudi capital. According to the Washington Post, an Iranian drone struck the CIA station inside the U.S. Embassy compound in Riyadh. Boy, that IRGC, they really exposed some weaknesses. This is a U.S. main spy hub. It's a heart of the U.S. intelligence infrastructure for the whole Gulf, and it's inside the most fortified diplomatic compound of one of the U.S. most important centers. It's right in the Saudi capital. Iran sent a drone through their defenses. The embassy is now closed. The consular services are all canceled. They tell everyone they should evacuate, but there are no plans on how to tell you to do that. And they even disconnected the phone number. That's not much help. A drone struck the consulate in Dubai and the embassy in Kuwait. Both have been shut down indefinitely. They hit the embassy in Jordan's capital, had to be evacuated. The embassy in Lebanon. How's it going? 4 U.S. diplomatic missions hit, closed, evacuated in the first 72 hours. So is the U.S. winning this war? Now, their way of fighting wars, and we know this Vietnam, we know it Korea, we know it Iraq, is to target the civilians. And this they are doing. It is ruthless. But they're having lots of discussions about their stockpiles because these drones bother them. A drone costs, on the average, for every $50 the U.S. spends, or $100 the U.S. spends on a multi-million-dollar drone, Iran spends about $1. And they're making thousands of them. The U.S. can only produce a certain number of their missiles in a year. So even the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff apparently warned Trump that, an extensive campaign has some serious risks, including depletion of their own munitions and their own stockpiles. So these cheap drones are another example of what's happening in the world in terms of changing technology, and it can be a real equalizing force. Let's keep that in mind, and we certainly saw it in Gaza, in tunnels, in hand-manufactured arms. So you have diplomatic missions hit, closed, evacuated, people told to flee and no evacuation plans, no even 24-hour hotlines. And this is an empire collapsing. Its war is not doing so well. There is no plan. Every press conference asks the president and any of the advisors, well, what's the plan? What comes after? They can't even cook up an artificial answer. At any rate, we could go on, talk about Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, all these hundreds of drones. The Iraqis hitting Erbil and in Iraqi Kurdistan. Explosions at the U.S. air base in Jordan, where the majority of actually the U.S. aircraft are based. And the main U.S. radar for the whole area is in Qatar. It got hit. It doesn't exist anymore. They're having real problems. The big U.S. Navy fuel depot in Bahrain, that's where the, Navy was hit. And then I could go on all night about what's being hit in the Zionist center itself, because they're getting a lot of hits and now Ansar Allah has come in Yemen, and Hezbollah in Lebanon into the struggle pretty actively. The Straits of Hormuz are closed. Now, what's the Straits of Hormuz? We showed at the beginning. This is the world's most critical energy checkpoint. It handles roughly a fifth of global crude oil and LNG shipments and so on. So there's a desperate effort by the US imperialism to reverse by military means what they can no longer accomplish with economic productivity. They are in a real bind, and they're trying to like gun their way out of it. And yet they know even more than we do that they are in complete decline. So they hope an all-out war is going to reverse that, and it can't be accomplished. Sanctions, war, tariffs won't return them to the position of the world of today. It won't succeed. But what it is accomplishing is really inflaming the people of the whole region who now are striking back in more and more ways. It's pretty incredible. We're only getting little bits of the news. Really, it's so little. You can comb through and you don't even know the impact. This hit, this is no longer functioning, this is evacuated. What does that mean in terms of the US empire? So there's a resistance at every level. And there's a deep feeling that the population of all these areas, you could look at what's happening in Bahrain, where the majority of the population is totally for Iran, is Shia against the feudal ruling class. You can see it in Palestine, of course. So I don't want to go on too long on this, but you know, here's the former colonized countries of the world that are refusing to accept. Now, by the way, China is giving aid in some of the most interesting ways. You know, the satellite maps that you could look in the whole world, anybody could see your own home address and see the license plate on your car. Just put in an address. Except when it comes to any US base or consulate or embassy anywhere in the world, and it's just a gray shadow. They've just taken it away. You can't see what's there. So China has just released a whole series of satellite maps that show every location in the world, including every base, every little container in the base, just as clear as a license plate. And it's released not just to Iran. No, let's make this acceptable to the whole world. Now, I think there are even some US soldiers that are going to be thinking about that. I mean, what does that mean in terms of safe space? It was only safe as long as it was protected. So they don't have that anymore. So I'll just sort of wind up on this because there's an explosive movement that's happening globally and coming here. And it wakes up not only the working class, but there are different factions in the ruling class. And that's important. And look at the Democratic Party. Now, they want to claim they're against this war. So they're going to push a vote on the War Powers Act, Now, they went into it knowing they weren't going to get the vote. And even if they got the vote, would it end the war? Any war? Has it ever ended a war? War Powers Act just says we want to be part of the crime. That's really all it's saying. You got to consult us before you go in. And there's no real criticism of it. But it enables them to say, you know, we're not part of this. Now, there are big demonstrations also saying stop the war. And here in the Imperialist Center, it's always determined, you know, the class-conscious forces are smaller in number, those that dare to defend the country under attack. What we say, the anti-imperialist movement, what does that mean? There's a real current in anti-war movements here that says these are our siblings, our sisters and brothers over there. And we have no interest in this war. That's really what an anti-imperialist current is. It's a class conscious current. It's a consciousness that is global, and who is under attack, feeling with it, defending it. And I think our role, modest, has been over decades to side, to be heart and soul for the Vietnamese and for Korea and for Iraq and for Syria, Palestine, always. You think of every one of these countries under attack, and there'll be folks that say, well, not this war, or let's have sanctions and not war, and let's do it this way instead of that. It's a current that wants to still hedge their bets and be with the established order. It's not easy, I will say, to be an opponent of U.S. imperialist wars on a class-conscious basis. Lots of well-funded groups. Now, we don't usually, but I want to give an example, because here's a group that's having a lot of influence right now in the movement. It's called the National Iranian American Council, NIAC, right? And they have a view of no bombing and no sanctions, except some sanctions. They say, oh, we're for targeted sanctions, not general sanctions. NIAC is important. They're speaking at all the demonstrations. They spoke on Saturday, the only Iranian speaker, and half their talk was while saying we're against the bombing. Here's 10 reasons why you should hate the current government and side with the, quote, democracy movement, and those thousands of Starlinks that were dropped. And is that the message we want to bring to the anti-war movement? It's a dual, confusing, disorienting message. So it matters who your allies are. It matters, are your allies those who are going to say, this picture here, we stand with not only Ayatollah Khomeini, but with the people of Iran and their right to resist. And we have nothing in common with the US government, and we're not going to tell them how to run their empire, that they shouldn't bomb, but they should try to overthrow the Iranian government through democratic means, through democratic demonstrations. No, no, no. That is a kind of disorienting. And it also is a reason why there is a whole focus. And now I think there's up to 100 groups who are calling out for actions on Al-Quds Day, because Al-Quds Day stands for Palestinian resistance and Iranian resistance and the right to resist. That's what it was called for. Here, let's have a day, the last Friday of every Ramadan, that is for resistance to U.S. imperialism. That was how they originally, as it was so important that we had that opening talk with the quotes today, because so that's our choice. Even which part of the Iranian movement are we with? Are we with those Iranians fighting, dying, struggling, resisting in Iran? Or are we with those who came here and are the royalists or the business people or the lobbyists, very well funded, good salaries, but they want to really be with the US empire? So I think we have some important actions coming up. One is tomorrow. That's very important. And one is Al-Quds Day next Friday, a day for Palestine and a day for Iranian resistance.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there any other speakers? Is Bahman Assad on Zoom that we know of from the U.S. Peace Council? Okay. Because, oh, did he want to say a few words? Okay. While she is looking, I just saw, and we have to confirm this, that Iran has captured 180 US soldiers. You have to confirm it. Yes, the Delta Force, that's what they're saying. You know, they're the ones who are sort of leading the Kurdish. Yeah. But no, I'm just saying that we need to confirm it. But but they had pictures of them, so we have to see. It was also confirmed, which we already knew, the New York Times also conducted an investigation on the massacre of the school children, that it was the US who carried it out. That's been confirmed by the New York Times. Investigation. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So did he want to say a few words?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me to this important meeting, and very timely and crucial for mobilizing some effort to counter what the criminal process the United States and Israel have started, not just in the Middle East and West Asia, but throughout the world, actually. As we know, these criminal actions, including the assassination of the supreme leader of Iran, who was really beloved by the people, and it was through his wise leadership that Iran survived 44 decades of sanctions and war and assassinations and everything. And we owe a lot of it to his wisdom and his understanding of the history and understanding of imperialism. So it was a big loss to all of the Iranians, including myself. And we are hoping that the next leader would be exactly following the same line that Ayatollah Khomeini was pursuing against imperialism and Zionism, and in favor of resistance. The question is, the problem we are facing today in terms of the crimes committed against Iran and against all masses of the region are a result of desperate effort by US imperialism that is losing its hegemony to kind of save its deteriorating domination of the world. And in that process, they have come to realize that the loss of the Middle East and West Asia, especially after the October 7th uprising of Palestinian people, and after the whole resistance movement in the region gained some victories, they realized that they are losing their control of the Middle East, and the loss of Middle East would be the end of their hegemony throughout the world, because this is a crucial area of the world that its loss would mean the loss of imperialist control of the whole world. And in that sense, if you look at it, the criminal attack that started left and right on the Palestinian people, and with the struggle of the Palestinian liberation, on Syria, on Lebanon, on Iran now, are all part and parcel of this putting an end to the resistance movement in order to regain or prevent the fall of the control of the region. And I would say that they attempted several ways. You know, you remember the 12-day war. They did those agitations in terms of the uprising, so-called, by their own agents inside the country. And since both of them failed, the last anniversary of Iranian Revolution this year was much larger in terms of popular support than any other year before that. And after that fake uprising that they created inside the country, the following day of that uprising, so-called uprising, 30 million people of Iran, that's 1/3 of the whole population of the country, were demonstrating throughout the country in support of the government. So they realized that if they allow this to go on, they're going to be losing the whole thing. The only way, and we know that, as Comrade Sarah mentioned, they are not going to be able to battle or fight or compete economically, politically, diplomatically, even morally these days. The only means left to them to try to save their losing control is military means. And that is how they decided that they should do it. And just to as an extra in parentheses point, I would like to say that I get a feeling that the attack on Venezuela was in fact there was a precursor on an attack on Iran, because they knew that with this war starting in the Middle East, probably supply of oil would be diminished from the region to many of these countries. The facilities will be hit. The Hormuz Strait will be shut down. And as a result, there will be an energy crisis or oil crisis somewhere. So they tried to first tap on the Venezuelans' oil before they could start this war. So in a sense, if you look at it, this imperialist attack is not just targeting Iran, but it's targeting the whole global south. And its purpose is, in fact, to get to China and Russia and put an end to the transition to a multipolar world. And all these crimes, and we should not sit down and think, even if this battle with Iran, this war, is somehow settled down, this is going to be the end of it. We are in a war situation for a long haul, as long as imperialists are going to resist their own downfall and commit to more and more criminal actions or acts to save their own lot. So what I'm trying to say is that we need not just a reaction to what the US is doing right now, but we need a long-term strategic approach, as Comrade Larry mentioned. We need a long-term approach to creation of a united front, and this united front has to be global, not just in the US. Has to be global, and it has to be an anti-imperialist front, not just anti-war. Anti-imperialist front, anti-Zionist front throughout the world to overcome this whole criminal gang that is now trying to suffocate the humanity altogether. So we are all in this together, and we are in a long run right now, and we need, and I think as a final point, as a precondition for creating a united front in the United States at least, what we need is to start process of negotiation, discussion with all anti-imperialist forces in the US to come to terms in terms of agreeing on a common platform of struggle against imperialism, both from national point of view and international point of view. Thank you very much.
Few announcements before we open up the floor. In fact, I want to call on Bill. Bill is going to make a very important announcement about another important struggle that's on the forefront in the struggle against imperialism, and that's solidarity with Cuba. And there are very important events happening next weekend that he's going to report on.
Thank you, Monica. I'm glad that Sarah mentioned that this is not a new war, but that the U.S. has been at war with Iran since 1979. This is just a major, very serious escalation. And as Comrade Omawali said, every escalation is a new sign of weakness of U.S. imperialism. Well, the U.S. has been at war with Cuba, a small island in the Caribbean, since the 1960s, and has carried out military interventions, a massive economic and financial blockade, sabotage of agricultural fields and factories, attempted assassination of the leadership of Cuba. And the Cuban Revolution has withstood all this, despite its small size and its proximity to the US. Well, not being able to overthrow the Cuban Revolution, they've now escalated again, showing another sign of weakness, but a very major escalation. And that's a full blockade of fuel coming into the country. Cuba produces about 40% of its energy needs and needs to import from other countries. That is now being blocked off. Countries are being threatened by the US if they deliver oil. And it threatens the very survival of the economy, of the population. It's really, I think, as I said before, attempted murder of the population if they don't surrender, if they don't end the revolution. And that US imperialism, as Sarah said, their wars always affect civilians, and they go after civilians to threaten the country and the government. And US imperialism would rather see the people of Cuba starve than live under a socialist society. And because of this escalation, Cuba solidarity groups around the country are coming together and trying to take part in united actions and come together for a week of action from the 8th of March to the 15th. Which is being called by the National Network on Cuba, which is the umbrella organization of many Cuba solidarity groups, of which Workers' World is a part, December 12th Movement is a part. There's many organizations that have been defending Cuba for years and years. So there's going to be a week of action, many events during this week. The first one is going to be Sunday, the 8th, is going to be a demonstration in support of Cuba and against the blockade and against these new fuel restrictions in Newark, which is a big step. The People's Organization for Progress has called a demonstration in Military Park off of Raymond Boulevard, I believe, on the 8th at 1 o'clock. And it's important that we expand, in other parts, not just New York City, but, other parts of the metropolitan area. Next Friday, this week in March is always a meeting in the UN of the Commission on the Status of Women. And the Cubans always send a delegation from the Cuban Federation of Women to take part in those discussions. And during that week, the women and other Cubans who come here take part in Cuba solidarity events outside the United Nations. So Friday the 13th in the evening, there's going to be a reception at the Cuban mission for all supporters of Cuba and to greet the representatives from the Women's Federation and from some of the other organizations that are coming. If anybody wants to go, is going to be in New York on that Friday, they should see me because I need your name as it appears on your identification, on your ID, in order to get in. We're told that it's not going to be restricted, that they're going to open it up to as many people that can come. Then on Saturday, the 14th, is going to be what's called an action conference where representatives from Cuba and Cuba support solidarity organizations in the U.S. will be participating. There'll be plenary sessions and workshop panels to talk about how we can move forward and what we can do in this country. Comrade Sarah will be one of the co-chairs of the second plenary on that Saturday afternoon. Then following that, the conference, there'll be a rally. By the way, the conference will be from 12 until 5:30 at the CUNY Graduate Center on 34th Street. Following that, there'll be a rally for Cuba, where again, there'll be representatives from the Cuban mission that will speak. There'll be entertainment. The rally will be at the Communist Party headquarters on 23rd Street and 8th Avenue. and that's going to start at 7. And that's going to be open to the public, and everybody's invited. On Sunday, the 15th, there's going to be an organizing meeting back at CUNY Graduate Center where out of the conference, we hope there'll be an action plan for the future and for the rest of this year. And there'll be sort of more specific details about it at this organizing meeting on Sunday the 15th, also open to all defenders and supporters of Cuba. There's also, finally, the Venceremos Brigade has what's called a coalition working group. We've been trying to reach out to other organizations and work with other organizations. And they're going to have a Zoom call, like a short webinar on the 13th from 2 to 3 or 3:30, where other organizations that support Cuba are going to be invited to make a short presentation and to talk about what the work they're doing and how the Venceremos Brigade can join them and support them, and how we can all work together to defend Cuba at this very, very critical moment. I would say, though, that because of the socialist structure in Cuba, they have been able to respond to this new crisis. The committees to defend the revolution, which are like block associations to defend the revolution, has been visiting every person in their block area or in their apartment building or in their farm to make sure that they're getting food, that they're safe, that they're not suffering unnecessarily medically, and that they're reaching out and taking care of the population as best they can. Food is being rationed, fuel is being rationed, so that everybody can both share in the hardship but also survive. And that's very important, that Cuba can respond that way, even in this very, very difficult crisis. So we hope that as many people as possible can take part in these events and show your support for Cuba, join in. Finally, I just want to say that all the groups are raising funds to purchase medical aid, material aid, and we are doing the same. We've been raising money to purchase small solar panels, which can be delivered to Cuba and set up on one building at a time, a hospital, a school, a factory. And so we ask that anybody who wants to make a donation see Tony in the back. She's collecting the money, and we're going to make the donation through the National Network on Cuba. They're going to be shipping like shipfuls, containers of solar panels, medical supplies, and other supplies. So if you can help out that way, that would be great. We have already raised money that we've sent over, and we're going to continue to do that. Long live the Cuban Revolution. Venezuela. Oh, Monica reminded me the conference will also be virtual. It'll be live streamed, the Saturday conference from 12 to 5:30. I think that's the only part of it that's going to be on Zoom. So if you're out of town or you can't make it, you can Zoom in. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bill. Okay, I'm going to open the floor in a minute, but I just wanted to make just a couple of more announcements, and I think Larry wanted to say something. Just that this Sunday will mark International Working Women's Day, which is a socialist holiday. And this is a very special protest that's happening this Sunday. It's at 2 p.m. It's Salute to Celia Flores, the first combatant deputy of Venezuela National Assembly. Everybody knows that, she and President Maduro were illegally kidnapped in December. And they're being held at the she's being held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. So there's going to be a gathering at 35th Street and 3rd Avenue. You can take the RDN subway to 36 and 4th Street, and it's initiated by the Brooklyn Against Wars, and it's supported by Workers' World Party and other groups. So you're being encouraged to bring flowers and signs and banners and chants to demand the freedom of Celia Flores and President Maduro. So that's this Sunday at 2 p.m. And we'll be sending out notices about that. And then the last announcement is just a really fun pitch. It's a fun pitch mainly for our Workers' World newspaper that's put out on once a month. And our newspaper, which is our Revolutionary Voice, mainly goes to prisoners. A third of our readers are prisoners. And so what we are doing, what we try to do every month is to raise funds so that we'll be able to send, our newspaper to prisoners who want to be informed. So, and also the fund pitch helps to pay for this office, which is not only a Workers' World Party office, but it's also a movement office where a lot of groups come and partake in, meeting here and organizing and so forth. So please give what you can for the newspaper, for the prisoners, and also, to keep our lights on and, they're stocked with placard boards and protest and copying machines and paper and so forth like that. So we can do our part in terms of keeping the movement going and growing. So thank you for that. And now we're going to open up the floor. You need to come up here, Larry. Okay. Mm-hmm. Sure.
I just wanted to mention, just to dovetail on Comrade Bill's comments. Everybody who a big part of their political work is solidarity with Cuba has been meeting various solidarity groups. I don't know if the People's Forum has had something. I know they're, doing stuff around, getting support and whatever. But I think at least here, that up to this point, the most significant response to this current crisis, because of the threats and the starvation and the military threats against Cuba, was organized by December 12th. They had a meeting several weeks ago under the banner, Africa called, Cuba answered. And most of you know what that, Angola, South Africa, et cetera, Namibia. And, I got to the meeting was in Brooklyn at Sister's Place. And, they got an office that's, and it's a little bigger than this office, so they're in the same ballpark. And I got there about 15 minutes late, and it was packed. And it was about 95% Black, multi-generational, and people who had gotten there a lot earlier, they didn't have seats. They were standing in the back. There were a lot more seats up than we have here, a lot more. And, one of the young comrades there had to find a seat for me because I had come a little late. They had to find, get him a seat, whatever. But, I know they had to vote on it. It almost lost, But anyway, it was just tremendous that, in the heart of the Black community, that's where there was this genuine mass response to this crisis. And that's, that's so good. It gets back to a point that Commodore Mawali was making, I'm a big fan of, doing stuff in, Manhattan. That's where Wall Street is and, all these big buildings and the rich live and whatever. But I'll tell you, if you neglect the neighborhoods where the oppressed live, you're never going to have a movement. You're not going to have one. And so it's good. It's a good message. And I also want to thank Comrade Omawali for, giving, the need for unity a serious and sober context, which I think we wholly agree with.
Omawali? And while Omawali is coming up here, I just want to recognize a very important leader from Palaver, um, Arias, who is online. Rus, I'm sorry, Rus. Palava. I don't know. Oh, okay. You just
He
said
always says
recognize,
something.
so. Okay, I'll call on a Rus in a minute.
Yeah, you have to wait. I don't know. Sorry. Oh no, just an announcement that tomorrow night, we're having a Cuba program in Queens at Black Spectrum. Oh, I'm sorry.
Close.
God, you told me that. So he's getting ready to say something. Yeah, I should know better. Yeah, I know you were. We're having a Cuba program in Queens at Black Spectrum Theater Company. Like I said, our thing was we have to get this out and around to different folks. So put it out, people who live in Queens tomorrow at 7:00 at Black Spectrum Theater Company. It happens to be my brother's theater company. It's been there for, what did he say? He told me, he says, it's been in existence for 56 years, but it's been in Queens for about the past 30 years. As a major cultural institution out at Roy Wilkins Park and St. Albans. There you go, right in St. Albans, right there. So tomorrow at 7:00, we're showing Cuba in Africa, and there'll be some representatives there. And I know we're having another program, right, Roger, on March 11th. No, at New Canaan Baptist Church, but Cuban women are coming. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to say.
You want to share that information on the thread, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I want to call on Arus. And please, my apologies. Okay. Oh, my apologies for mispronouncing your name. So, you want to say a few words?
Yeah, peace, y'all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And
I
I
can hear you,
heard,
but we can't see you.
oh, yeah, can't see me?
Oh.
Okay, there we go. Can you see me now? Oh, there we go. Okay. Peace, yeah. How y'all doing? I see D12 study group is in the spot. Before I was a Marxist, I was an attendant of December 12th study group. I've been slacking a bit to the study group, but have the utmost respect for the work that they do. And I hope a lot of folks do the due diligence and come to that Cuba program. In regards to what's going on, I think primarily, one, the Palaver Collective has a full support for the people in Iran. And to have support for the people in Iran, you have to support the government that's fighting the imperialists that are trying to invade that country and imperialize that country. And I think one of the most concerning things going on right now is a propaganda war. Sarah Flanders made a really good point on the Iranian organization, the NIAC, that comes in and tries to throw this nuanced approach. And we have to understand that we have to think dialectically and very principally about what's going on. There's not necessarily just a socialist bloc around the world right now. There's an anti-imperialist bloc, which is trying to move the world from a unipolar one, where the US controls it, to a multipolar one. And it's very stressful and frustrating to see even people who call themselves Marxists, people who call themselves socialist revolutionaries, they condemn the same country that's fighting their primary opponent, And I think it's really important that firstly, us who have the correct line, the objective correct line, which is against US imperialism, Omawale said earlier, tell no lies, claim no easy victories. And within that, Cabral also says, hide nothing from the masses. We cannot say we support Iran and the people of Iran and just emptily say nothing else. We have to say Ali Khamenei, who has been fighting for the people, we support him as well. The government of Iran, we support them as well because they're fighting US imperialism. And furthermore, in terms of the propaganda we push out, we have to have people understand, and also fellow organizers, this isn't just a socialist bloc that we simply support. Countries like Cuba and China who are progressive doing the work, but also anti-imperialist ones. Well, sure, you can argue have internal contradictions and internal issues, but primarily are fighting for the material resources to be owned by their people and not by the hands of corporate greedy people in the US. So again, in terms of the propaganda we're pushing out, I was very, very disappointed to hear that there was an organization speaking at a protest for Iran saying no more bombs, but we're against the Iranian government, as if they're not the people who are fighting those bombs away. So I'll only come out to say, like, folks really have to understand the primary issue, the primary contradictions, US imperialism. And you say anything else that stands against it, those are our friends. Anyone who says anything that gives any inch to US imperialism is our enemies. And any person pushes propaganda and incorrect lines around that, we can't bring in. So we have to stay very sharp around that. And I also want to say I'm very optimistic because I just reflect on the lack of US abilities to use economic domination as a tool right now, right? Imperialism walks on two legs, one economic, one militaristic. And it's limping right now because that economic leg is extremely weak. The sanctions in Venezuela failed. People are now understanding that you can look to Russia and China. And now, militaristically, I really hope, well, I don't want to say anything, but I'll just say militaristically, it's failing as well. It's failing. It's showing so many cracks within its super large network of militaristic components. You thought it was unbeatable. So one leg is limping, the other one's close to getting knocked down, and from there, we're going to finish the job. So in terms of that, the primary thing I'll say is a propaganda battle right now. Because with Venezuela, there's a propaganda battle. It's calling Maduro a dictator. We know that's incorrect. There's a propaganda battle around Iran right now that's incorrect. And even within China, trying to call them a non-socialist country. So we have to consistently, not just within the masses, and we have to go to South Bronx, like Omwali said, Brownsville and Bed-Stuy, and other Black oppressed communities. But on top of that, hold our fellow organizers accountable when you have someone saying nuanced bullshit inside these protests. We have to say principled, and we have to hide nothing from the masses. So in regards to that, I just want to push that having the correct line is one that we share with the masses and our fellow organizers. And more importantly, we should be optimistic because the US is falling apart and we're seeing that happen right now. So, just want to say great program you guys put on. We send a full solidarity. I would have been in person, but I thought I had a meeting today. Luckily, unluckily got canceled, but I could be here today hearing some radical voices. So, and also Edrus, it's pronounced Edrus, but thank you very much. And you guys have a very sharp analysis.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to open up the floor just for a few minutes because it's already 9 o'clock, and some of our we have a progressive stack, and we follow a protocol prioritizing comments from people of color, women, queer, transgender, non-conforming people, people with disabilities, young people, and those who have not spoken, and calls. And I'll make a list of people who want to speak and put it in an order, but really you have to really keep your comments, 1 to 2 minutes, because I think we want to try to end by 9:15. Okay. Okay. What do you have? Okay. Okay, if anybody's interested, they should see you. See you at Omawali. Okay, okay. And we'll send out the information too. Okay. Thank you, Roger. So I know Daphne wants to speak on Zoom. Anyone else would like to speak, John? Anybody else? This is probably the okay. Okay.
We have someone from D12 study group that would like to speak.
Okay. All righty. I got you down. Anybody else on Zoom or in the office? Okay, I'd like to call on the person in the D12 study group, then Daphne, and then John. And please introduce yourself.
Maybe put the laptop in the cable. Okay. It's not long enough. Right. Where's the camera? Oh, right.
Oh, there's William.
Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I usually there, but today I'm here. I um, anyway, I think that the camera is over there. I just want very quickly say that today marks another year since the death, we say, the assassination of President Chavez. So I think that it's important to remember him. Also, we know that who, along with Maduro, President Maduro and his wife, First Lady Celia Flores, they are our modern heroes and the fight for independence from the Yankee imperialism. The world is dying and the new world struggle. The new world struggle to born. And this is the time that we are living right now. That's the time for monster and basically that's Antonio Gramsci's quote that was always used by President Chavez. In this critical moment, the global south is confronting those monsters. And to be able to be successful in that fight, the global south has to really unify. The entire revolutionary struggle, the entire revolutionary movement all over the world has to be united. And that includes United States, of course. I also want, an ending, just invite everybody to be with us this coming 8th and the March of International Women's Day in support of Celia Flores, who is the deputy of the Venezuelan National Assembly, who is a lawyer, who was the lawyer for President Chavez, and who is the first lady of Venezuela that was kidnapped by this administration. And also, I want to invite everybody to join us this coming 26th and the hearing in front of the court and the federal court, and basically to be there in front of the camera. Hundreds of people show up, hundreds of media show up. That's time that we were there, and it's extremely important to be there in big numbers and to demonstrate that Venezuela have a big amount of people in support of President Nicolas Maduro and First Lady Celia Flores. Free Maduro, free Celia. Thank you.
And for those who don't know, who just spoke, that's William Camacaro, who is a leader of the Bolivarian Circle in Venezuela. Thank you, William. Okay, Daphne.
Thank you, comrades. I am Daphne Barrueta. I am with Workers' World Party Buffalo. Just want to say a couple things. First of all, thank you to everyone who's on today with this wonderful meeting. Important discussion of unifying our forces against imperialism. Also wanted to add two short things. One is on the subject of the United Front. If we're talking about study materials, something I found really enlightening is the Cuban Revolution. Fidel actually wrote some notes about the United Front that they had to form, to fight against U.S. colonialism. And so, interesting read coming from our comrades in Cuba that many people may not be familiar with. Last thing I wanted to add is, several people have commented about this ruling class parading people from specific backgrounds. And, as a trans person, I've seen that myself. I'm sick and tired of people taking someone like Caitlyn Jenner, who is, owns capital. She's petty bourgeois or bourgeois. I mean, that's to be, argued out, not working class whatsoever. And, there's no understanding, no dialectical understanding there. And so, as we say in Workers' World Party all the time, class is primary, nationality is not secondary. And I would add, neither is gender. We got to think dialectical and tell these liberals, start teaching these liberals to think that way too, so they don't get fooled by Iranian bourgeois puppets, speaking for the U.S. ruling class. Thank you, comrades, and thank you to the AV person making this happen.
Thank you, Daphne. Okay, John, and then any final speakers before John speaks? Else he'll be the last speaker. Okay. All right, John.
Okay, is this working?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I wanted to speak because what turned me on was someone raising the question of how annoying it is to see the media paying a big attention to a few GIs who get killed, while so many people, so many Iranians are getting killed, so many people we really identify with. But I just wanted to point out another side of it, because besides being a managing editor of Workers' World, I wrote a book called Turn the Guns Around, because I wanted to keep for history and for the possibility of such an opportunity turning up again, that it's possible sometimes to organize the troops, because usually they're part of the working class. Although now we have a military that has been, it's sort of a semi-professional military. I just call it semi-professional. But in this book that I wrote about our organizing work during the Vietnam War, and about some historical events where soldiers were organized against their governments while they were carrying out, wars against other people. What was I going to say? That at the end of the book, I said, well, what kind of situation could it lead to where this could arise again? And I had a chapter called Dempsey's Dilemma. And it was that the military, because of the way the military is now, they don't have a lot of troops. So it's hard for them to send a lot of troops in somewhere and actually occupy and conquer a country the way they did in the 19th century, the way they did throughout a lot of history. And it wasn't working for them. On the other hand, if they did something like reinstate conscription, the draft, they have a problem of having a mass army that has a lot more contact with the people. Anyhow, that was the problem. And I said, well, one thing that could change the situation from how it is now and make it more like it was during the Vietnam War is if one example, I said, if there is a major war with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of troops used, such as against Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Russia, China, or Iran. And the other possibility was the use of troops against the population, against demonstrations or against strikes or against, as we see today, as what happened in Minneapolis, and gave a good example of it. These are things that can raise an opportunity to reach to the troops. So when I hear, I can both think at the same time that it's kind of disgusting how they'll take people who are now probably committing war crimes and feel sorry for them in the paper, whereas they don't do that to the masses of the people who are suffering so much, the Iranians themselves, the rest of the people of the region. But at the same time, when troops are killed and when they're reported as being killed, and it starts to be known and the families know, it gives an opportunity to reach out to them. And to, if we can win anybody in the military, even individuals over, who make it more difficult for the U.S. to carry out its murderous policies, or even better, if masses of them are able to organize against actually carrying out orders, then that's something that we, and I've raised this before, this is something we have to be aware of and possible to. Comrades tonight have spoken and quoted from Amilcar Cabral some of the lessons that he taught to revolutionaries. Well, one thing Amilcar Cabral did in the early parts of the Revolutionary Liberation War of Guinea-Bissau against the Portuguese, is write an extensive pamphlet directed at the Portuguese troops, asking them not to fight for the rich people in Portugal, but to refuse to fight. And if they come over to the revolutionary movement, the revolutionary movement will help them get the hell out. And so I think that's important for us to keep in mind both things. We get pissed off when the media distorts how people should be thinking about the suffering and who our brothers and sisters and siblings are. And on the other hand, what opens up a possibility of struggle? And this is, and casualties amongst U.S. troops open up a possibility of struggle. That's it.
Thank you, John. Okay, comrades and friends, we're going to end this meeting. It's been a really great meeting. We'll have many more. It's just the beginning of this incredible, unprecedented situation. So I'm just going to end by saying victory to the Iranian resistance, to the workers and oppressed everywhere. Long live internationalism. Stay and have refreshments, talk to people.